right? It's really hard to perform well if we're not being well led or supported. It's hard to be a good leader if we're not being well led. And if we have a boss or a leader or an investor or a shareholder or someone who's coming down our neck and providing pressure, and then we cascade and provide that pressure down, right? So there's a shift. Is a great way to perform better is prioritizing people, their well-being and their growth, because it's not all robots doing it or AI doing it all yet. It's human beings doing the work. And I think there will forever be a piece of this industry that human beings do. And the better the human being feels, the better they'll show up and perform and innovate and form bonds of trust and cooperate, all the good things. So it's the reason why lean management doesn't work, but Kaizen or continuous improvement does. Because Kaizen and continuous improvement values the input and the process, of which one of them is people first. But when we only talk about lean, which is the output and the outcome of it, but we aren't honoring all the inputs that get us the appropriate output, we end up cutting it at the knees and it all falls down.
I like that. Can you just, for those people that are listening and watching that aren't familiar with Lean and Kaizen, can you just explain briefly those two models?
Sure, and if you know more, bit better or different as well, bring it too. I know a little bit. So Kaizen is a Japanese word and philosophy that is about continuous improvement. That's the philosophy. And there are one of the greatest organizations that does this well is Toyota and the Toyota manufacturing line. They have something called an andon cord that any person on the factory line, even if you're the most junior, is allowed to pull the cord if there's a significant safety issue or they see an opportunity to make something better. And it's celebrated. Even if you pull it and your idea was wrong or whatever it might be, you're still celebrated for it.
So this is the opposite of what was experienced at Boeing.
Yes.
When they tried
and continues to be experienced at Boeing, I would argue, yeah.
There is no celebration when anyone pulls that cord, if there was a cord at Boeing.
If anything, you're punished or fired or reprimanded. Yep. So lean is the same stuff, but they talk about the output of it. So when you do Kaizen and continuous improvement properly, you end up getting more effective, more efficient processes, operations, and a high-functioning, high-trust team. When you only talk about lean, you are pushing the performance without the inputs to get you that performance. Yeah, so that's how I view it differently.
Yeah, that's good. There's definitely more lean in the construction industry as we try to get to net zero than there is Kaizen.
Yeah.
There's definitely more emphasis on these are the numbers. We need to get the numbers right, as opposed to these are the people. We need to help the people get right.
Yeah.
Because everything that we do within the industry is all people-centric. Mm-hmm. Buildings are built for people, and they're built, designed. The imagination or the vision is all created by people. And so it figures to me that it needs to be more people-centric than what it does need to be number-centric.
Yep. And when we put the people first, the numbers tend to do better anyway. So absolutely.
So talk of the culture, we've spoken with reference to Speak Up, and it does bleed into culture. But I'm interested, just from your book, is how those two bleed together and the premise of the book and the invite really that we're left with at the end of it.
Of Speak Up and culture, or of... Well, so, yeah, I mean... I was saying to you before that Speak Up shouldn't be an instruction. Speak Up is a culture. It's an environment. What I mean by a Speak Up culture is that it's an environment where it feels both psychologically safe and worth it to speak up, to share what we see, feel, and know, to bring our ideas, even if they're half-baked, to share feedback with one another to help each other grow, to share concerns, sort of the proverbial smoke before it becomes fire, to disagree and debate. The true test of a Speak Up culture is how productive our debates and our disagreements, and to admit mistake, believing that on the other side of that mistake is improvement, not being ignored or not being punished. Yeah, and it is so much both about the person speaking up as well as the people who are supposed to listen to what is being shared.
So how is that different then from something around kind of the psychological what is it called? What's the term?
Psychological safety.
Psychological safety, that's right. How is that different to psychological safety?
So when I first started writing the book, I fully admit I thought I was rebranding psychological safety. So psychological safety is a well-known body of work. It was first written about in 1960. A scholar, Amy Edmondson, who endorsed the book. Amy is wonderful. She really helped to amplify this work. And there were a couple sort of major pivotal moments and studies with it. One was in the late 90s that Edmondson was involved in, and she studied emergency rooms in hospitals. And the emergency rooms that had high psychological safety, there were more medical errors reported than those with lower psychological safety, which is confounding to the researchers. They went, well, there can't be more errors occurring, and that's the key distinction: reported, not occurring. Inside of the hospital room environments and the emergency rooms where there's high psychological safety, more folks would willingly raise their hand and say, we messed that up, we need to improve upon it. Where there wasn't psychological safety, there were actually more errors occurring, but fewer reported, because more people were spending time hiding the mistakes from each other, sweeping them under the rugs that didn't exist inside those hospitals. 2004, Project Aristotle at Google identified psychological safety as the number one determinant of a high-trust, high-performing team. And so I'm a big fan of the body of work, but I've got a couple bones to pick with where it has been. One is psychological safety is a mouthful, hard to access.
And to remember as well for me.
Sure, right. As well, it doesn't, the label on the jar doesn't describe the contents to me. To me, it sort of puts an academic lab coat on top of a very real human emotional experience. Edmondson herself said, not my favorite term, it's just been around since 1960. I wrote a paper early on in my career. The reviewer of that paper said, oh, you're talking about psychological safety. And her response is, will it get me published? They went, yeah. She went, okay, great. So I leaned into good old Zig Ziglar, people don't buy drills, they buy holes. And so if the work is highly academic, hard to access, hard to action upon, I went into, well, if the drill is psychological safety, then the whole, what you get is a speak-up culture, right? Let's market that. But as I delved into the work, I realized and formed this 2x2 matrix of the questions we will ask ourselves, either consciously or subconsciously, before making the choice to speak up. Is it safe to speak up? Absolutely. And is it worth it? Because if it's psychologically safe but not worth it, let's say you and I go back 35 years and we're best of friends, and you see that I'm behaving in a way that is getting in the way of my success, my health, my fulfillment, whatever it might be, you intervene. You share feedback with me. I'm so grateful. Couldn't have gone better. It ends in a hug and tears. I'm like, Darren, I'm going to get better. Thank you so much. And I successfully do nothing over the next 3 months to do anything different. And you're like, maybe it was me. Maybe I didn't speak up properly. I'm going to enlist friends and family, and I'm going to do it again, but in a different way, and it couldn't have gone better. And then over the next 6 months, I don't do anything different. Still psychologically safe. You can tell me anything, but your belief that I'm going to do anything different, it's not worth it. So apathy or futility sets in. So this 2x2 matrix that I've created, it's safety to danger, psychological safety to psychological danger, and it's apathy or futility to a high perception of impact, that it's worth it. My choice to speak up, I believe, will actually lead to me feeling that I matter, that I belong, that my voice matters, and that even some change will occur because of my choice to speak up. And there are even instances at Boeing, as an example, where Ed Pearson, who's one of the best known whistleblowers, he didn't feel psychologically safe to speak up, but he felt that the stakes were too high. The perception of impact for him was, I'm willing to lose my job here. He even retired early because he couldn't take the culture anymore. But he spoke up to the GM of the facility that was making the 737 MAX to say, stop the line. This is not safe. To which the GM said, this is not a military operation. Pearson came for the military. This is for profit, right? I got to keep the line moving. To which he's like, what? Like, why should the standard and ethics be lower in for-profit than it is in military? So, yeah, that was Ed, where it didn't feel safe to speak up, but it still felt worth it. And you see courageous leadership there.
Yeah, because that's true leadership, isn't it? Him speaking up in that regard.
Yeah. And he was sacrificing his own safety, security, well-being to do what he felt was right. And unfortunately, he was right.